Hey there, how you doing? It's been a while. To be honest, this time of year you've probably seen not many koi pond videos. Things are reasonably quiet. What has changed since we last spoke? Well, first of all, on the pond temperature, again we're back to very mild weather. It's 12 degrees outside. And the pond at the minute is 10. The lowest it has got down to in very cold weather has been about 8.5 degrees, which I'm happy with. You know, last year, I think I've mentioned a few times, got down as low as 2 degrees without the covers, so the covers definitely help. We've a bit of wind today, but the last couple of weeks have been practically no wind, which believe me is very unusual for Ireland living on the coast. But even though it got very cold and sub-zero on some days, ponds still stayed up around 9 degrees, and it just showed that it really is the wind chill that affects the pond rather than the actual air temperature itself. But pond has been good, fish are good. Have done, you know, my sort of every 2 or 3 weeks doing the bottom drain flush and back in the ponds, and it's keeping grounds. I was feeding the fish up to just after Christmas, because again, as I said, it was very mild. It was over 10 degrees they were eating, but I have decided to stop now. You can see they're all still very active and up there, and they've been like that all the time. Overnight I generally tend to put my piece of 100mm insulation in the window just to keep the temperature up. But I've stopped feeding them, and even though it's over above 10 now, I'm not going to feed them again. I'll leave it for another month or so and see how we do. I don't want to feed them again and then stop, which I likely have to do. Well, a month is probably being optimistic. I've also found, and this is interesting for people who have big blue filters, as you can see, I have cleaned out the carbon. It's a messy job. I decided to do it into that. I watched James the Koi Whisperer video he did a few months back where he changed the carbon in his, and he did it into a barrel, and that's what I did. And it's the least messy method, but it's not pleasant, and it's a matter of tipping it up and shaking it and rinsing it and doing that multiple times. It's very heavy at the start and eventually gets lighter. The reason I did that was, as you can probably guess, as part of my sort of every 2 or 3 week maintenance, I check the water for chlorine using DPD-4 tablets. And the last clean about 2 weeks ago, there was a hint of pink. Now, that is after about 100,000 litres in that, which is a medium-sized 3-foot big blue. So that is after about 100,000 litres. I have this thing, it's not on at the minute. I've showed you that before. It measures the flow rate for my trickle in, but it also measures total throughput. So it does look as though around 100,000 litres is the max for me. That's about 6 months. I was hoping I'd get about a year out of it. They do say that you can get 200,000 litres, but I'd say that depends on a lot of things. So I changed the sediment filter. That wasn't too bad. It was a sort of a slight hint of brown on it. And I also changed the activated carbon. That's a bag of it there, 25 kilo bag I got between a friend and myself. So I did mine and he'll do his with the rest. You get 2 out of the bag. You know, it's one thing to consider if you're buying a big blue. They're expensive enough to buy. They're around £220 I think for that one. But the carbon, you know, and that's kind of the minimum spec carbon. That's the coconut shell based. There is another one again, which I think Andy Fink sells, which is much more expensive with that. This one removes chlorine. I believe it doesn't remove chlorine, although I'm not as concerned with that because we are told in Ireland that chloramine is not used. Now, whether that's all the time in an emergency, I don't know, but it's not something over 20 years of keeping fish I've ever been aware of I had a problem with. The other higher up one that does take out chloramine, I believe, is around £160 a bag. Now, whether it lasts longer or not, I don't know. But you know, it's expensive, so I went with that. The other problem here in Ireland is getting this stuff from the UK, a 25 kilo bag, getting somebody to send it. I just was lucky enough to have a friend of mine over there a few months back picked it up, but trying to find a local source for it. So it is a messy job, this stuff, you know, it is carbon, so it's coconut shell. I believe it's probably incinerated. It's like ash, crystal, very small, fine powder. Pour it in here, that lid comes off. Again, if you want to see the details, have a look at James the Koi Whisperer video. I didn't bother videoing it. And it's dusty as well, so pour it in, and then you get it up to about here, not fully up to the top. And then, as you do when the unit is new, it's necessary to run water through it for about an hour. It looks fine there, actually. I'll leave it for another while, but you know, with all the dust that goes in there, you really get black water for a good few minutes out of it. And that's kind of it. So that's the kind of maintenance. Obviously I'm going to have to get another source carbon somewhere else and be prepared in the sort of July time frame to be doing this again. As I say, that roughly I think it's about 2,000 to 3,000 litres a week I put through that filter, so that's what I got out of it. And that's it. I mean, everything else has been going well. My UV since the last time thankfully hasn't leaked. Filter's running well. I did, by the way, add another 50 litres of UV in there. You probably don't need it now, but I did it because it fits. Now the filter itself is rated for 150 litres, but when I drained it down to do the UV, I could see that the media was kind of down here, you know, there seemed to be plenty more room. The only problem I did have was when I put the new media in, I did have both my bottom drain and this running off the same pump, which was the 130 litre one here. When I turned it on, there wasn't enough air to turn over the media, so what I had to do was, luckily I had a second pump I wasn't using, so the 70 litre now purely doing the bottom drain, and I have the 130 litre purely doing the bio chamber. As well, I found, and I think I mentioned before a good while ago, I wasn't worried about it, I noticed that my spin drifter looked like there was more air on one side than the other. Now I have to say, since I put more air through it, I don't seem to have that issue now. When I am cleaning it does spin around, so sometimes it can look okay, and then at the back it's not great. But I'm sort of wondering what part of my problem was between the biofilter and the spin drifter. I just wasn't maybe putting enough air through it, and it is there now. So that's it. As I say, happy enough the way things are going. Not a huge amount. That sort of one job I have to do. I will do the flush the bottom drains again, but not feeding. You know, at the minute they're not as bad as they would normally be, although there's still a bit of algae in the bottom of the ponds. And that's it. So if you have any questions or comments, give me a go. If you have a source in Ireland for activated carbon, let me know. As I say, it's not cheap stuff and it adds huge expense. In fact, I'm not sure anyone would necessarily ship it over from the UK, because that is bloody heavy. It'd be like getting a bag of coal, to be honest, shipped over from the UK. I think the shipping would be more than the value itself. But anyway, that's it. Thanks a lot, and talk to you again soon.